Welcome to Talkin' Shit, the podcast where we get real about the unfiltered truths women face in the quest for perfection. I'm Jana, your host, a dietitian and fellow woman navigating the pressure to have it all together. The perfect body, career, relationships, and making it all look effortless. Who set that standard anyway? Here, we're calling out the diet fads, hustle culture, beauty standards, and everything else that keeps us feeling stuck. But we're not just venting, we're diving into how to break free and rewrite the rules on your terms. So, grab a coffee or a glass of wine and let's talk some shit. Together, we'll uncover how to live a life that's unapologetically yours. This is Talkin' Shit. Let's dive in. Awesome. Megan, I am so excited that you are here. We have been chatting in the DMs for a while, making related to eating disorders, actually, was the first time that we met in person. But I wanted to invite you on because you work specifically with women. And so I wanted you to share your experience and really dive into some topics that a lot of women struggle with, but maybe don't know that they're struggling, or they feel like they're alone in the struggle, and they certainly aren't. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I just love having these, real authentic conversations and just like diving into some of the deeper stuff. So I just appreciate this platform that you're providing me to do this on. And yeah, I'm Megan Velo. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Am in private practice. I'm currently doing all virtual sessions with clients, and my primary population that I'm working with is moms. I have kind of a combo of postpartum moms. And then I also work with moms who are kind of in the thick of it, that are burned out, trying to find their pink again, as we say in the postpartum world. But so yeah, that's really like where my bread and butter is. But I work with people from, all different walks of life, and going through all different things as well. So it's not specifically just that, but that's definitely where my niche is currently. So and yeah, I'm also a supervisor for some therapists that are working towards their license, and that is really exciting and fun for me too because I love to teach and mentor and all that. So, and I'm doing a little bit of the Instagram thing, just trying to have some fun on there as well. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love it first and foremost because we're even talking about postpartum. Right? Like, I mean, I feel like for so long, like, it would just was like, "Well, you had your baby, you're good." Right?
Yeah.
So now I love that you are able to support women in that way, or that even as a society, we're doing a much better job of opening up that conversation and supporting a mom, in a really difficult time, that a lot of people I think have said like, "Oh, it's wonderful," but and it can be certainly, but there's also a lot of layers to it. So that's really
Yeah.
great supporting them in that way.
Mhm.
Okay. So when we were chatting of like what to like talk about and just kind of like open up, some of the first things that came to mind were the idea of like connection, but then also like busyness. So which one do you want to tackle first? Like which one kind of comes top of mind for you?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think we should just dive right into connection, and I think busyness will maybe get brought into that.
Okay.
So that seems like the natural progression.
Okay. Where are we going with connection then?
Well, I think that, you know, it's funny because I just said, like, I'm doing the Instagram thing, like, a little bit and having some fun on there, and now I'm gonna, like, talk about Instagram and social media and how it's kind of creating a false perception of closeness to people in our lives. So, I think that social media and has evolved into something that's wonderful and beautiful and connecting, but I think it's also something that has, some thorns along with it as well that we just have to be aware of. And so I think thinking back to life before social media, before Instagram and Facebook, even and TikTok, and all the things that have come along, um, you think about just like the types of connections that people had and what they were doing with their time and energy. And the connections were just, in my opinion, like so much more intentional. Like you had to be so much more intentional. You had to show up for people. You had to call people on the phone. You had to write letters. Um, it was just so deep and authentic and vulnerable too. And I think as we've watched social media kind of evolve, we've really seen this lack of connection with people, but this perceived idea that we're connected to them. Um, I think about people that I went to high school or even college with that I can tell you what's tell you what's going on in their life from a surface level, that they have 3 kids and they live in this town and they're working this job and they just bought a house and like so in my mind sometimes I feel like I'm still connected to these people and this feels really good that like and I think there is some, you know, um goodness to that of like we do get to see what's going on in people's lives, but I think there comes a point where it's like we feel like we're connected to them and we're really not. Like there's this facade in social media that these people are close to us at times because we see their stories and we see what's going on. And I think that sometimes that drives this feeling of loneliness because we feel close to people, but we don't sometimes feel completely known by people. And I think that sometimes gets in the way of really building authentic, genuine friendships.
And isn't loneliness the new epidemic in our society?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. I see that definitely, like, with my postpartum moms and just this idea that there's nobody in our corner or there's nobody that we can talk to. Everybody's so busy, and I'm a burden if I reach out and ask for help. And I think that really drives that idea of loneliness for sure.
Yeah, gosh, Megan, this is like tapping into something like in my own story, and it's really vulnerable to share, but I think it will help like other people as well. Is that the loneliness, especially during the pandemic, really took
Yeah.
myself, right? Like I live alone, my family lives in another state. I was isolated from all my friends at that time, and I
Yeah.
was so afraid. Like I wasn't afraid of COVID. I was like the loneliness is really
Mhm.
compounded
Mhm.
and even though, people will do this now, right? Like you said, like, they'll view my stories and they'll be like, "Oh, you're so busy," but what they don't realize is I'm at home, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm not doing anything, I'm just sharing what I'm doing, like, from a working perspective, but it's not like I'm out socializing or doing all these things, so I think it creates a very false narrative
Mhm.
someone's real life
For
versus
sure.
us having to be like, go and like knock on their door and be like, "Hey, what's up?" Right? Like
Mhm.
I'm 37, so I'm an older millennial. And
Mhm.
I still remember like I didn't have my first cell phone until late high school
Mhm.
because I was playing sports and my mom and dad needed to know like where they needed to pick me up. And so
Yep.
still had like we had the one phone line if someone was if like my for my older sister, like, if someone called her, they would have to wait, like or we had the one dial up, for the
Yep.
internet, and so if you
Mhm.
had specific right? Like, so I still remember that, but
Mhm.
I'm so curious about the younger generation, like, they have no context to that, like, everything
No.
is all on social media.
I know we are literally the last generation to live our lives, like our childhood, without social media. Like, and there's a great book out there called The Anxious Generation that is just so awesome because it really talks about Gen Z and how anxious they are, and how they're the most highly diagnosed, highly medicated generation that we've seen. And they talk about the introduction of social media into this generation. And especially young women, the ages between 11 and 13, they're so impressionable. And this idea that like they're on Instagram and they're seeing like this person has this outfit on and they're with these friends and like we didn't have that. Like, I mean, we had AIM, like we'd get on and chat with our friends, but like we didn't know who else was hanging out and who else was chatting unless their away message said, "Hey, I'm with so and so," but we were all posting moody song lyrics, so we never did that. Um, but I feel like now it's like you see these highlight reels of these teenage girls' lives, and these other girls are just like, my life is I'm so alone. I'm so weird. I'm nobody cares. Like they're all doing something fun and I'm not. And I just think that the idea of this social media with young kids is really, really impacting them a lot. And I think on the flip side, as we get more invested into this, we're having the same kind of effect as as an older generation, as in watching our, people hang out together or do things or have this outfit or look this weight or, have these cute baby pictures. There's this idea that like these people have their lives so together and we aren't seeing the nitty-gritty of their life.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but so what I hear is like comparison is really hindering genuine connection, not only with our like own selves in our own life, but also with others. And then
Mhm.
I would guess that this is also leading to this feeling of like never good enough, can never keep up, right? Like all the
Yeah.
like really just like at the core of it, like not good enough, which then
Mhm.
is never in a healthy space mentally, emotionally, physically, right? Um, what is that like accurate or like what do you see? What do you hear like people sharing with you?
Yeah, for sure. Yes. I think that nails it right there. But, I'm thinking like a perfect example is if I get a postpartum mom in my virtual office that I'm meeting with, and she's saying, I see my other friends, they just had a baby and like they're posting these pictures that they're out at the park with their baby and like she bounced back, her body looks so great. She's breastfeeding, it's so easy. Like there must be something wrong with me because these things are not true for me. Like I'm not bouncing back. Breastfeeding is really hard. I'm anxious. I'm sad. I'm crying all the time. But here's this other person that's posting these beautiful pictures and like there I must be broken. I must be broken. And that's really true for copy and paste that for any situation, for a teen girl, for a person in the work field who's trying to build their career, um, for a person who, is in a marriage looking at another comparison of a marriage. I mean, copy and paste that just to whatever you want, and we're all experiencing that in some way.
So that narrative of I must be broken and God, like I just need to sit with that for a little bit because one, like I have goosebumps hearing you say that because I've certainly felt that. I know so many women that I work with, right, that are trying to lose weight and can't lose weight. They feel like their body is broken. I
Yeah.
just hear this so much. And I'm wondering, like, how do we if the narrative is I must be broken, how do we start the process of like healing that and being with
Mhm.
that to get to a more like supportive narrative?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, this idea that we must be broken to me is I must be broken now is such a cover of a lot of our childhood brokenness that we felt at some point. Um, this idea that of shame that developed somewhere in childhood. We all carry some source of shame. Like if you don't, then I want to know how because yeah, unless maybe even people that are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, a lot of that is rooted in shame. So they appear to not have shame, but it's driven by a deep feeling of shame. Um, but so all of us carry this shame that's developed somewhere in childhood. This is my personal belief as a therapist, because I do a lot of childhood work and a lot of parts work. And so at some point in our life, we experienced like this idea that we're not good enough. And it could have been unintentional by a caregiver. Maybe they were a workaholic. And so in their mind, they're thinking like, oh, I'm just providing for my family, but maybe you felt that neglect. And so you didn't feel good enough. It could be anything like that. It could be a significant trauma. It could be some friendship trauma. It could be anything where there was this feeling of, I'm just not worthy of love. I'm just not good enough to be accepted. That feeling is so painful, I think, for us as humans to deal with that we tuck it deep, deep away and we create these protectors, these other parts of us to not get into that feeling ever again. Um, and so I think that's really where this idea of I'm broken began. And if you're talking about how do we get back to a place where we feel healed, I think you have to go to the root of the brokenness, and a lot of people, that's scary. I mean, in my own personal life, like, I don't really wanna talk about that stuff, so it's painful. That's why we deep it put it deep, deep down, but the goal of working towards I'm not broken, I'm actually, it's okay to struggle, I'm a good mom even if I'm struggling, that starts with dealing with why do you feel broken in the first place?
Mhm. So two really big emotions that I hear is working with individuals that struggle with like emotional eating is the shame and the guilt.
Mhm.
What is the difference between the 2? Because I think some people confuse them, and I think it's really good to know the difference between shame and guilt. So,
Yeah,
what is
mhm.
the difference?
So Brene Brown, I'm sure you've heard of Brene Brown. She talks about how she created her whole career on shame. So she's like, if I'm on an airplane and someone asks me what I do, I tell them I'm a shame researcher, and then they never ask me any more questions after that. And I love that for her, you know? Um, but she talks about like guilt is I did something bad, shame is I am bad. And that's a huge distinction in just like I am struggling with something, or this is difficult, and like, I am broken, I am difficult, like, I am the problem. That's the difference between shame and guilt. So guilt is like, that remorse that I did something bad. I recognize that. Shame is I am the bad.
Mm. Which one, so from like a behavior perspective, which one usually drives us to like more non-supportive behaviors? Or
Definitely the shame. Yeah, for sure. If we believe that we're bad or we're broken, that's such a painful experience that we will create different protectors of that feeling to avoid that feeling. So that could be overeating, restricting food, drugs and alcohol. It could be anger. It could be gossiping. I mean, there's any part of you that feels like it's um, not productive at times could be something that's protecting you from feeling that guilt or shame.
Mhm.
Shame specifically.
So what I'm hearing is then those are the behaviors that really prevent us from genuine connection.
Yeah.
And it
Yes.
usually like allows us to, or often I've seen like most of the time there's a retreat aspect to it where it's like, well, I can't go into that. So I'm just going to hide myself basically from who I really am. And you're hiding it from yourself and also other people. But because
Mhm.
of that, then there's not the genuine connection. And oftentimes people just say, like, I feel like I don't fit in. No one gets me. No one understands it. Right. Like those narratives start coming out when it's
Mhm.
really the shame that's talking.
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, a good example of this would be like, let's say I'm on social media and I'm scrolling and I see somebody whose life, like, um, looks perfect, right? So I instantly maybe feel that shame in my life, like, well, you know, my kids leave the house without their hair brushed or whatever. I'm like having all these negative thoughts about myself.
Yeah.
And then I call my friend and I'm like, have you seen so and so's post? Like, I can't believe blah, blah, blah. And I'm going into this like just gossip session because I'm triggered. I feel less than because I'm looking at this person's stuff. And so I'm venting to my friend and gossiping. And that is not making me feel seen. It's making me feel maybe validated in my anger, but instead, if I felt that, I the authentic thing that we would want someone to do is call and say like, "Man, I'm feeling so insecure right now. I'm feeling a lot of shame about like, my kids sometimes leave the house without their hair brushed." And the hope would be that like that connection with your friend could be like, "I feel that sometimes too, but like we're just trying our best and like, that's more of an authentic connection. That's that deep down shame being exposed and being talked about instead of the cover, which is the gossip in this situation.
Mhm. And it also looks like that would be a practice of self-compassion.
Yes. Mhm.
So, okay, one of the biggest pushbacks that I get when I work with individuals to be more compassionate to themselves, right? Like, so I often say, like, you are your own bully, right? Like, the things that we share in our mind, like, gosh, if we were to share them with other people, we would really be bullied,
Well.
right? Like,
Mhm.
there would be
Mhm.
concern. And so, like, when we step into that self compassion aspect, a lot of women will say, like, well, I can't be kind to myself because then I'll never change, or then I'll just be at this weight, or then I'll just gain more weight, or then, right? Like it's always like they can't do it because it's going to be a worse outcome. Is that actually
Mhm.
true?
It's not true, and that part of them, that part that's saying I can't change because that's a protective thing. So what I do in my office was that with that is instead of saying like, yeah, here's some positive things that you can say instead, I want to hear more from that voice because that's the shame speaking. I can't slow down because then I won't change, I won't lose weight. I can't do this because well, I wanna hear what tell me more, why what that I can't slow down, I can't stop, I can't because there's something in there that voice of that part of them that's trying to protect them from feeling that shame.
So is that why a lot of us like just stay really busy then? is because we don't wanna hear that voice?
Mhm.
Or, like, what,
For
like,
sure.
actually drives that then?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, there's different things, that drive that busyness, but I think that definitely it avoids us being alone with our thoughts and feelings, and for many of us, high functioning women, firstborn, I always talk about, like, a lot of the firstborn traits, which, they all d if you're a middle child or youngest, you can have these traits too, but it's a common first trait thing is that type A, um, we thrive on that. We got a lot of positive feedback growing up for being busy, being involved, being in student council, being in, in sports, being in whatever. Like we were affirmed in that. Like your worth is in what you can do and provide and perform. And so we carry that into our adulthood is like, am I involved? Am I bringing in an income or am I, at home with my kids, like being the best stay at home mom I can? Like, where am I at in my career, in my fitness journey? Like we take what we were taught in childhood and we just duplicate it into adulthood. And that's what I think drives the busyness is there is a sense of I'm doing all these things, so I must be good enough.
Mhm. What's the line? Because like, there is like, I think there's a part of it that can be really healthy, right? Like, to be involved, to have that connection with your community, to,
Yes,
keep your body moving, to give back, to serve, right? Like, all those things, like, have a really healthy aspect to it.
for
Or,
sure.
like, where's the line of where it becomes not healthy?
Yeah, that's a great question because I mean, I agree. And, my life is busy as well and in getting everything that I want to get in. I think the biggest thing is self reflection along the way of really listening to what our body needs. And maybe you can relate to this as well with like intuitive eating and stuff like that of really listening to like when is my body full? When is it not full? Like what workout sounds good to me today? Like, am I running 3 miles because I feel like I have to, and if I don't, I'm gonna feel shame, or am I running 3 miles because my body is asking for that kind of exercise? Am I going to this person's party because I feel like I should and I need to? Or is my body saying, like, I am completely wiped out? I'm on the verge of like an emotional, episode. I just need to say no. So I think it's going back into that self-reflection and really asking those questions of what I need right now.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so good because I think that's something that all of us can create for ourselves is like, how do we know when we are starting to like spiral really into like that unhealthy aspect? And
Yeah.
something I realized for myself is I know there's too much on my plate when my like basic needs aren't met, right? Like if I'm not able to nourish my body, if I'm forgetting to drink water, if I haven't moved
Mhm.
my body, right? If I'm not sleeping, like those are basic needs and if those things start really getting wonky, right? Like they're
Yeah.
just then I know there's too much on my plate and I need to start establishing boundaries because my people pleaser, she likes to say yes to everything.
Mhm.
"Oh, yeah,
Me
not a
too.
problem.
Mhm,
But
I can feel you on that.
yeah, but she also like she drives a lot of exhaustion as well, right?
Mhm.
So she
Mhm.
has to have her place at the table.
Yeah.
And she also has to have boundaries, and I literally
Mhm.
speak to her that way, right? Like,
I
she
love that.
yeah,
That's yeah. And that's, like, part of what I was talking about earlier is, like, a lot of times we shame those parts of us, like, "I just wanna be different, I don't wanna people please, I want" but we have to, like, she deserves a seat at the table, like, why is she wanting to people please? What's going on for her right now? So I love that.
yeah. Do you, um do you feel like that's a lot I mean, I so it's interesting, like, as it relates to the feminine, right? Like, the feminine energy and just, like, females, like, I am so pro woman and, like, yes, you can do anything and everything you want, right? Like, go and, like, follow your dream.
Mhm.
And I'm also like, but you don't have to prove it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Like, we don't ha like, the energy behind that doesn't have to be, "Well, I'm gonna prove you wrong," or, like, it's, like, really based in that, like, fear mindset
Mhm.
versus
Mhm.
that, like, abundant mindset of, like, "Yeah, you really can," like, there's nothing that can hold you back other
Mhm.
than, like, yourself, and we wanna make sure that you feel, like, really healthy and whole when you're doing it.
Yeah. My goal would be that, like, with my clients is like, if you want it, you can do whatever you want. We're going to support you in achieving your goals. But if you're waking up every morning feeling like you are worthy of love, whether you do that thing or not, then we're good. You know, if your self worth is based on whether you do the next thing, run the half marathon, whatever it might be, we're getting into some sticky areas that may cause some, dips in how you feel about yourself. But if you're in a place where you're like, I really want to run a half marathon, and if I don't do that, I still think that I'm a great person and I love who I am. Like, then we're good.
Mhm. Man, that's hard.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
for someone that's like really resonating with this conversation, whether it be from the connection aspect to the busyness, like and they're like, yeah, I don't feel connected to myself or to others.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with loneliness, or I am so busy, but I don't know where to say no. Like I have to do all the things. Like
Mhm.
where can they start in their own journey?
Yeah, that's a great question for sure. I'll start with the connection piece. When I had my daughter, my first child, I really struggled with loneliness. I had a couple friends that had babies, but it felt like Groundhog's Day every day. Like I was just waking up, and I was still working like a couple days a week, but the days I wasn't, it was just like, especially when they're a baby, they're just laying. I mean, you're talking to them, but they're just not talking back. So I felt so, so lonely, and I really, really struggled, and, when I had my second child, I felt like I'm not gonna let that happen again, like, I'm gonna put myself out there, and so I just put out a little thing on Instagram like, "Hey, I wanna start a mom meetup, anybody wanna come?" And I had, like, 6 friends say that they wanted to come, and now we've been meeting, like, for almost 3 years in May, so 2.5 years, um, and I was planning some weekly meetups. Now it's more organic, and if people are going to the park, they say, "Hey, we're going to the park," and we go. And that has been so life-giving to me, just being able to connect with other people, and plan a get-together, and I feel like, for some moms, maybe it's not you being the planner, but maybe it starts with, like, one friend and for people that aren't moms as well, it starts with one connection of, "Hey, like, I wanna read a book together. Let's start a book club." Maybe it's just me and this other person. Maybe we start a walking club or something like that. It's so much easier to, I think, connect when you're planning something like that feels intentional. That makes a good bridge into the connection of, hey, let's meet up for pickleball, or let's meet up for whatever. Let's start a movie club. Whatever it might be, whatever your passion is, just inviting one or two friends, and that alone can make you feel seen. And it also dives into some of those passions that you have as well. So that's kind of the loneliness piece.
Oh, yeah, so I love that you said, like, passions or even, like, hobbies, because that's another one where a lot of people will share, like, "I don't even know what I would like to do anymore," right?
Mhm.
Like, especially if they're a mom and they're working and, their time is dedicated to those things, and so to create or to even see what they like now in this new life phase
Mhm.
can be very daunting, but I like that too because you mentioned a lot of different things that people can do together to have fun, but also move their body, and I think that there's a portion of connection that really drives us to like it's fun, it feels healthy, it energizes
Mhm.
us, right? Versus say like always going and like eating and drinking, right? Like
Mhm.
a lot of times, like a lot of people do that, but they still don't feel connected to people. So
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned those of like really just like healthy habits.
Well, and think about how we connected as kids. Like we were playing hide and go seek, we were playing tag, we were playing make believe together. And of course, like, that's gonna look a little different now. But same kind of energy of like, how do we play together? How do we have fun together? Like, and how do we use our brain in a different way that we don't use it through our workday or, with our kids?
Yeah, that spontaneity aspect. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so on the busyness front then, for someone that's like, I have to do all these things, right? Like it's a non-negotiable. Like I just have to do them. Like I've committed to them. My kids are in all the sports, right? Like how do they start navigating busyness if
Yeah.
it feels like it's way too overwhelming?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I struggle with this, like I said, as well, of just feeling like saying yes to everything. But I think the important thing, totally forgetting the name of the book, but there's a book that talks about setting goals and they say like set your goal and then cut it in half so it's attainable. And I always love that mindset because I think we're like, okay, I'm going to do an hour of self-care every day. And that the first day comes and maybe they do it. And then the second day comes and then they don't do it and they never do it again. So then it's just by the wayside. And I'm sure you see that with like exercise and eating habits as well. But when it comes to self care, especially when I'm working with the busy mom, I'm like, you need to start small. Like, you need to start with just 10 minutes a day. Let's just work on giving yourself space to have 10 minutes to connect with yourself. And my biggest thing is training our brains to not be on during those 10 minutes. Like, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's sitting outside or gardening or going for a 10-minute walk, or just like listening to music or a podcast or whatever, as the minute your mind goes to like, "Oh, I gotta text that person," we're gonna just tell our brain, "That's for 10 minutes from now. Right now is my time to turn off," because that's a huge issue for us. It's like our brains are in fight or flight so frequently that they don't even know how to turn off anymore because we're so wired. So if we can just practice with small increments, if even 10 minutes feels too big, start with 5, just like 5 minutes of sitting with a cup of coffee or, walking, and like I said, every time your brain goes to like the to-do list, we're bringing it back and we're noticing what we see around us, like the trees. We're training our brain that like it's okay. Like when you're off, you're off.
Mm. Oh my gosh. I'm sure that someone listening to this is like, that sounds scary. Right?
Mm.
Like, the idea of being off is also very intimidating. So
Mhm.
that's another reason why we wanna start, like, low and slow because,
Yes.
like, you're literally getting your body reacclimated to, relaxation.
Yes.
I always like to share with my coaching clients of like, we're going to set the bar low, and I'm air quoting this because I want you to be the overachiever. So, like, right, like you said earlier, like, okay, well, you could set the goal for 5 days a week, but something happens on day three and then you say F it and then you don't
Yeah.
do it. Now you feel
Mhm.
like a failure. Versus if you're like, say you haven't done it at all and you set it for 1 day a week and you do that 1 day a week, now you achieve the goal and if you do it 2 days a week, now you're an overachiever, and that really helps us with our mindset being like, "Oh, I did it and maybe did more," and it keeps you motivated. So you want it like
Mhm.
because it all counts and it all adds up, and we just wanna start the process of getting the body used to being able to accept relaxation.
Yes, because the thing is, for those of us that are busy and we thrive off of that, when we have a morning off or nothing going on, we are filling it. Like it'll be filled, don't worry. And so the more that we can practice like the 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 15 minutes of relaxation and slowness, we will be able to enjoy those moments off and not just fill it with stuff. Speaking to myself right now of practicing that, but I think that's it. We got to work our way up. If we're just going to tell somebody, hey, you're too busy, start saying no, like that's never going to happen. And then from there, also getting to the root of why do I feel like I have to be so busy? Is my worth built in these achievements, and um, y- going from there and just doing some self reflection?
Yeah. How do we separate that though? Like, because there's a part of it, like I think that certainly like that worth aspect. And then there's this part of it that I hear often and that I've also felt of like this necessity to be able to take care of yourself in today's world, right? Like you have to do that. Like, for example, like you have to show up on social media because that's how my business grows.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
or you have to, work this many hours because you have to make a certain income, like, how do we
Yes.
delineate those 2 just, like, for our own selves?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a struggle because there are needs that we have to do that drain us. I think there's always gonna be those types of situations that come up where it's like, "Well, I have to do these things, for my livelihood and all that." I think recognizing where you're, feeling the most strained in your life, and if it's that, self-evaluating, like, "Well, is there a chance, like, if I have to work X amount of hours, can I take a 5-minute break during my day and just listen to, like, my favorite song or whatever it might be? go for a walk, stand outside, showing up on social media. It is say I agree. It's like the way that I'm getting clients and it's the way I'm marketing myself now. And I recently, went through a family loss. And so I took a month off and I I had to know if within myself when the right time to come back authentically was, and I was still working and seeing clients, but I wasn't showing up on social media. And so I think it's just important to honor like the breaks that you need, whether that's an hour, whether that's a month like I did. But it doesn't have to be drastic. It could just be you recognizing this part of my life, this work that I have to do is very draining, but where can I find pockets and glimmers through the day to honor, like, myself? And like you said, we don't really know. We lose kind of like our, hobbies and things that we enjoy. It's rediscovering those things. Like, what fills my cup? Is it a warm cup of coffee? Do I get excited about that? Is it standing outside? Finding those little pockets and being able to do those things in those moments when we can't, go to the beach or go wherever we wanna go, those are gonna be really life-giving for you.
Yeah. I also think it's like so I call it gut check moments. I think it's a gut check moment because if we were to really do like a time assessment of like where we're giving our time and attention, there's a lot of time and attention given to TV or social media that's very mindless.
Yeah.
When we start becoming more mindful and looking at where are those pockets in your day that you can start giving to yourself, I think it's
Yeah.
very eye-opening that, yes, you do have the time within your day to start the process of, like, calming yourself down, feeling
Yep.
stressed, feeling less overwhelmed, right? Like, all those things, and you, the individual, has the power to do that. Uh,
Mhm.
so I certainly, yeah, hear that, and that's
Yeah.
a way to maneuver it.
Yeah, I heard the statistic, which was crazy. It was, we check our phones on average 150 times a day, and that we, teens and adults are spending anywhere between 4 and 5 hours on their social devices, specifically more social media. And that was just like, oh my gosh, that is so much time, And I think that's that false belief that like I just don't have time to like call my friend, or I don't have time to do whatever because it feels like our time isn't there, but we really have to check our screen times and see like how much am I really giving to this that I could be giving to something else. And I am not anti screen time. Sometimes I've done like another podcast where I talk about this and I'm like in my head like I sound so anti screens and anti social media, but I'm not. I'm just more so like let's use it when it feels good and healthy to us and make sure that our basic needs and our other needs are met as well so that we feel don't feel drained walking away from using social media.
Yeah, all I hear you saying, Megan, is that you get to establish the boundaries that actually work for your life, right? Like it, and I'll say this often to my coaching clients: it doesn't control you, you control it, right? Like
Mhm.
we actually have the power to say, like, okay, I'm only going to check social media for 2 hours today, right? Versus like four. Or you do have the power to say like no to certain things. Is it going to be uncomfortable and is it going to be different? Yes, but you still can do this thing, right? And we want to build that muscle so that we can practice it and so that it becomes more and more part of our default. But those are still things that you do, in fact, have control over. And we're just establishing like what, because if you don't feel good, then that's where we want to get curious of like, okay, then what's off and how do we modify that? And what is in your control, what's not in your control, right? Like so that we can take those
Mhm.
steps forward.
Yes, definitely. I love that.
Okay. Well, just kind of like wrapping everything up, I feel like we talked about so many good things and we could definitely like dive into a lot more, but I'm sure like
Mhm.
a lot of women are like, yes, yes, I resonate with this.
Mhm.
What's kind of like the like last thing that you want to share or just like that you want to give to women for today?
I would say just on this topic that vulnerability is really scary and really hard, and it is something that we have to practice. But I would say that vulnerability is going to be a connecting thing, a healing thing for you, for so many people. Finding safe places, and that's half the battle right there, is finding safe places to be vulnerable with somebody else. It is so crucial. Instead of leaning into the social media, leaning into the comparison, the busyness, the loneliness, and isolating more. It's so crucial that like when we're having those days that we find somebody that we can say like I'm having a really hard day and this is what I'm feeling. A lot of times those people, especially if it's like your husband or your mom or something, like they will want to fix it and they'll say like here's the solution to your problem. And that's not going to help. So I always tell my clients like tell somebody that you want them to feel it with you, not fix it. And so just being able to sit with somebody else in that pain and being like, I'm sorry you're having a hard day. Like, it's going to get better. Or like, I hear how hard that could be, just super validating. That's really what we need. So if you can find somebody that you can be vulnerable with, that's really just the first step, I would say, in taking to feeling less lonely, more connected.
Are there certain, like, things that someone should consider before they share something like that, like, with an individual? Because I can imagine if we're starting right, like, if the individual is starting to change their own behavior, it's gonna be a different experience for everyone around them.
Mhm.
But I also have had the experience where like, with sharing and the individual's not able to receive that, and it actually creates more shame and more
Mhm.
retreat, right? So when someone is like working towards becoming more vulnerable and sharing what they need and looking to form that genuine connection, are there certain things they should keep in mind with individuals who can be that safe space for them?
Yeah, definitely your history with them. Like if they have not responded well in the past to your emotional needs and your vulnerability, I would say that they're not safe. If they've used it against you in the future or in the past, that's not going to be a safe place. So those are definitely red flags for sure on opening up. I wouldn't open up to somebody too soon that you don't have any kind of evidence that they are going to be there, although that is how we build relationships with people, giving little nuggets here and there of vulnerability and kind of seeing how they handle it. Um, so those would be some thoughts that I have. If someone has been able to hold space for you, that's great. I would lean into that more. If somebody has been willing, but unsure how to do that, that's another safe place because you can tell them what you need from them. A lot of times people just don't know what you need emotionally from them. They don't know that you just want them to listen. Like I said, they want to be like, well, have you tried talking to so and so? Or like, whatever it might be. They want to make the problem better because they don't like sitting in pain with people. We don't none of us do. But if you just say like, hey, I just want to vent or I just want to like share that I'm feeling this way. And I just need you to say, like, I hear you, I'm sorry. Telling them exactly what we need. If they do that, that's gonna be a green flag for us and knowing that, hey, this person is probably safe for me to open up to.
Mhm. I imagine this is also the power of therapy or even like coaching. I think about this from the coaching perspective with like even being able to say like what you need from a food end is very like powerful, but to have that space where you can literally have the conversation with someone that's a third party and is not involved can really
Mhm.
help with creating that articulation to say and also identify what you need to be able to give that to others.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And that is really a shame reducer, right? Like if we open up to people and they sit with us in the pain and they hear us, um, that is gonna reduce the shame that is internalizing for sure.
Well, man, I feel like that goes into a whole other story, but for today, where so if individuals are like, "Okay, yeah, like, I need more support on this," like, where can they find you, Megan?
Yeah, I think that was something else I was gonna mention is that, like, if you're noticing that, like, this shame thing keeps coming up for you, maybe you haven't recognized it as shame, you're recognizing it as, like, one of those kind of protector pieces that we talked about, but now you can see, oh, it's really rooted in some shame, or you can recognize maybe where the shame cycle started for you. Therapy is a great option to dive deep into those things and be able to kind of untangle the ball of yarn that has created this shame feeling for you. And I'm happy to, either, connect with that person or connect them with someone else if they need that. But yeah, you can find me at Mama Therapy House on Instagram, and my website is mamatherapyhouse.com. And yeah, I'm happy to connect.
Also, I'm just gonna, like, put my hat in for therapy. I'm a huge advocate for it and also coaching, but it's not like I think there's just such a shift as it relates to just like mental well-being of like it's not to talk about these things so that someone can feel bad about it, right? Like or to have pity on you. It's to talk about these things so you can resolve them and heal and like have an amazing life, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the end goal. It's not to sit in the shame and like be like, "Oh, poor you," type thing.
Yes.
It's literally to process it, get it out, and be able to move forward.
And at the bare minimum, we're just hoping that you have some, you know, some more self-awareness of why you feel, because we do that with my clients and a lot of times and they're like, "Okay, so now what? Like, I know now where it comes from, now what?" And that's the next step, but I'm like, the amazing thing, amazing first step is just understanding why you feel the way you do and maybe whose voice it is that's triggering some of the shame. So yeah, that's really, really the first step. And I also like to say this too is like as therapists, sometimes it's intimidating because you feel like, well, this person's gonna judge me or like they have it all together. And we definitely don't. Like we're in our own therapy. So we're all figuring it out. But the helpful thing is someone has been trained to look objectively at your life and be able to put the pieces together that may help you have a little bit more of that self-awareness. So we come with no judgment at all and we are just there to listen. And the amazing thing is like we don't know anybody in your life. We don't know the situations that have unraveled. So we are so objective. We're never going to take like other people's we're never gonna talk to other people. We're just gonna be a safe, neutral person, and that makes therapy feel really safe sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, huge advocate for it. So exciting. I am so thankful for you today and appreciate your time and just being able to talk about this conversation or to open up this conversation and share it with other women. So if individuals want to reach out, certainly do that on Instagram, it sounds like, or the website.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
I'll also tag that in the post I do from this, but then also on the podcast itself. So thank you so much, Megan.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
This has been Talkin' Shit. If you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up or leave a review on the Apple Podcast app. If you want more episodes, click that subscribe button. And if you want to learn more, visit healthwins.org. Talkin' Shit is produced and hosted by me, Jana. This production is also made possible by the Community Media Access Collaborative. Learn more at cmac.tv. See you next time.